Hi, we're Deb and Phil from Creatives en Route, and it has been 1 year since we quit our jobs to travel full time.
It has been a wild year this past year, and we have learned all kinds of things. So we want to share those lessons with you. So hopefully it can give you an insight if you're thinking about doing this kind of thing yourself.
We're going to share with you what we've learned specifically, what we feel like we did right, what we maybe didn't do quite as well as we would have liked or would change for next time, and then finally, the moment you've been waiting for. We're going to give you the details on what's going on in our lives, where we're at with work, where we're at with travel. Just give you a recap so that you know a realistic perspective of what things look like at the year mark. Spoiler alert, we're not famous travel influencers.
Yet.
Working on it. Hit that subscribe button. Just kidding. I mean, actually subscribe. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Last April, after saving aggressively for about 6 months and saving a little bit consistently before that, we made the decision to quit our jobs to travel full time. We felt like we wanted to have some of that freedom for exploration that we've really been craving, and to be able to dive into some of those creative endeavors that we really had wanted to explore but hadn't had a chance to in our daily routines.
We had a goal for ourselves to reach all 50 states, and that has been a long process, but this was a really cool opportunity to check off a bunch of those states. So we went out west and went up to New England, and took a few international trips as well, driving up to Canada and flying down to Costa Rica.
Yeah, we have plenty of travel vlogs of all of those experiences that we would love for you to check out. But this video is really focused on the details to help you make this possible if it's something that's interesting to you.
So first things first, here are a few lessons that we learned while we've been out on the road.
I think the biggest thing for me, and something that I feel like maybe is a little bit counter to some of the YouTube videos and podcasts that we listened to when we were prepping for this, is that we learned a lot about ourselves. I feel like a lot of those things were saying to me, you're not going to learn that you're suddenly somebody way different. You're not going to suddenly become a yogi on a beach in Costa Rica when you've never done yoga a day before in your life. And that is true. I feel like we are the same people that we were before, but we've had the space to explore so many things and try so many new things that we've learned a lot more about ourselves, about us as a couple, and about what we want in our lives in the future.
Yeah, I think stemming from that, we knew that we were creatives before we started doing this. But especially engaging on YouTube, it was this new creative outlet that we learned gave us a lot of life and a lot of energy. And it was something that we really said, hey, how could we do more of this? And so it's kind of a unique way to learn that lesson that, being creative is really something that's important to us and something that we would want to do longer term moving forward.
We've gotten to explore new creative outlets that have just been really meaningful and really life-giving to us as well.
Absolutely. I think another lesson that we've learned from the road are just, focusing on what our values are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of those things are relationships and experiences. So while we've been out traveling, we've gotten to reconnect with some people, and those have been the most meaningful parts of travel and meeting some new folks.
Yeah, we've met up with friends and former coworkers on so many of our travels, and we've just met new people. But then also when we were home, we kind of took those lessons and reached out and reconnected with other people from our past.
I think, stemming alongside that with those values have been putting our money where our mouth is, and, getting ready for this kind of trip and this experience. We had to save up a lot, but also in doing that, we said, these are the things that we value, and some of these other things we don't value as much. Really honing in on what kinds of things that you really value can give you a lot more space than you realize in your life, whether that's time or money, to hone in on what you really, really enjoy doing and what brings you life.
Yeah, we'll get to the specifics of the amount that we saved up, but I think the reality is so many times in our culture, we are really prompted to just buy random crap all the time. It's really in your face. And I think that we have just felt this huge sense of freedom by being able to take the money that we are working for and actually spend it on things that match our values and that give us the types of experiences that we want to have.
What are we working for? Are we living into our values, or are we leaning into whatever other people might have to say about how things should look for us?
Amen to that. All right, first things first, money.
I think that we saved up really well for this trip. So once we decided that this was something that we were going to do, we started saving really aggressively. We were both working, which was helpful, and we didn't already have a lot of major expenses, but we also weren't working like really high paying jobs. But settling in on saying this is our singular focus allowed us to save a lot more aggressively. So we had a goal of saving $30,000, and we were actually able to save a little bit more than that too, which was really, really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we ended up saving about $35,000, which honestly blows my mind to say that out loud, because for so long that felt like, honestly, it was just not something that would be possible. We have both worked careers in the nonprofit sector or nonprofit adjacent sector, and so it's not like our salaries were huge. And I have student loan payments, and I think a lot of it really just boils down to really taking a look at our finances and things that we purchase. Like, instead, we went through those things with a fine-tooth comb and said, no, we're not going to buy any of that stuff that just really doesn't make our lives better. We're going to save it toward this goal, because we can picture ourselves on a beach in like 6 months.
So we had planned ahead to try to think about, hey, how could we travel for about 3 months and then have a little bit of a runway to go and figure out what long-term financial stability was going to look like. And so 30,000 was our goal, because that felt like it was going to give us that window that we needed. Mm-hmm. And I think that was fairly close. I think the other thing, along with planning ahead, is to try to think about what kind of ways can you set yourself up to deal with some of those problems that are going to happen on the road. So one of those things that we did was sign up for AAA, or to make sure we got our car serviced, or to keep some simple tools in our vehicle, because that was going to be our lifeline to making travel work. And so we really wanted to make sure that we had some element of like insurance for those different things that were going to happen when we were out on the road.
Yeah. And I think some things still happened that we couldn't plan for, but those things gave us a little bit of a safety net just in case.
Yeah, absolutely. So early on in our trip, we had to replace all 4 tires, and thankfully we were prepared for that. Of course, it's a hit that I didn't really want to do.
We did not want to do it.
No, but we had prepared for it, and so at the end of the day, it really wasn't a huge deal.
I think one of the biggest and most obvious things is building the platform bed in the car. It was something that we had done, I think, 1.5 years beforehand, and we'd already been out on a couple of trips with that. But that was something that really allowed us to do the level of road tripping that we were able to do. On this trip, we mostly traveled within the U.S. We traveled a little bit internationally, but the U.S. is really expensive to travel in. And so building that platform really allowed us to see more in the U.S. at a lower budget. But we also just really enjoy it. It's not for everyone, but if it is potentially an option for you, I would say go for it. We have several videos that can help you out with that process, but we love having the camper bed in the car.
Yeah, it has made things so much more flexible for us. And I think that's another thing that we got right, is because of our setup, we were able to be super flexible, and we ended up having some experiences that we never would have planned for. So it's kind of the flip side of that, is, being open and being willing to try out new things and be flexible was something that really helped us kind of gain new experiences that we wouldn't have had otherwise.
All right, so we've talked about what we did well, but let's talk about what we maybe would change next go around.
Yeah, thankfully it wasn't too many, but there are some key things that I think were lessons that we've looked back on and saying, well, we might have done that differently. So I think the first thing is kind of the most obvious, is having more money saved up would have made a few more options a little bit more available, which of course is always helpful.
Yeah, I'm super proud of us for what we were able to save, but there were plenty of times that I was just having so much fun and really enjoying it and thinking, man, I wish I would have saved like starting earlier, because it felt like, I can't believe I spent so many years buying random crap when I could have been saving to like extend this even longer.
Yeah. Some things that you might want to do are naturally going to be a bit more expensive. And certainly there are ways around that. So traveling the US for us, building the camper was kind of that way around some of those major expenses like lodging.
The second one, I would definitely travel more internationally next time. I don't, like, neither of us regret having done all of the travels in the US. We were thrilled to be able to make so much progress on our 50 state goal. We are now at 48 states, and we're going to hit those other two very soon, so keep an eye out for that. But there were plenty of times that we were already well into our trip that we were thinking, man, I wish we could pivot and do some international travel. But that sticker price for the plane tickets was really the thing that was holding us back. So yeah, I think that kind of ties back into, we wish we had saved up more. Once you are in a place internationally, usually the prices are typically a lot cheaper than travel in the US, but because of the way we did it with the platform bed, it just made a little bit more sense for us with our budget to go ahead and do this, and then focus on more international travel later.
Yeah, but I think in hindsight, planning ahead a little bit more and focusing on some international travel, I think we probably could have made more of it work than what we did.
Yeah. We did go to Canada and Costa Rica, but
So,
not that many places. We have a long list of bucket list destinations internationally, so we're very excited to start checking more of those off.
Another thing that I think looking back on it is just one of those pieces of advice that I would have given my former self is to just start earlier on things. So we had planned for a bit of a runway because we knew getting a job or figuring out financial stability was gonna take a little bit of time. I don't think I realized at the time how long that was actually gonna take. So some things would really benefit from getting started earlier.
We gave ourselves a 6-month runway. We initially said we were going to only travel for 3 months, but before we even hit the road, we already knew we were extending that to 4, and then we gave ourselves a 6-month window. And because of the way that we were doing things with taking some contract roles, we were really doing a lot of hybrid, like coming back and working and then hitting the road again. So we continued to travel throughout that whole period of time. But I think like making some of those plans and going ahead and getting started on things is something that we will take for next time for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of with that same thing, I really wish we had started YouTube earlier. We were kind of waffling on it in the very beginning. We had some friends that encouraged us to do it, but we just weren't sure, and we weren't sure that we had the equipment, to be honest. And so we started a blog and an Instagram and a TikTok, and honestly just felt like we were doing too much with all of those things. Making all of that short form video content it's a lot. And so once we pivoted to doing YouTube, we found that we just really loved that long form storytelling kind of content. And it makes sense because that's the content we loved consuming beforehand, but it really felt like we were able to tell a full story with that instead of trying to just make something that was just quickly attention grabbing.
There's also gonna be lessons that you don't know until you get in it and you try it.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of things that we learned about doing YouTube or honestly any of this stuff that we didn't know what we didn't know until we got started. And so I think we learned a lot of lessons in the early point. And if we had started whenever we started traveling, we would have learned those lessons while we were on the road and maybe been in a place to be creating better content a little bit earlier, which would have just moved the timeline along. Because I think our YouTube channel has grown steadily, which has been good, but always that earlier start probably would have been better because we would have learned a lot of lessons along the way.
We've learned so much because we've really just decided to take those risks. I know there's so many cheesy cliches to say about like, do it scared or there's no better time than now. And I mean, they're sayings for a reason because typically you grow the most when you take a risk and when you go ahead and say, this is scary. Like we've had stable careers, we've had stable jobs. It feels like we're like that trajectory of security is what you're always encouraged to pursue. But I think that when you do that, you really miss the opportunity to grow outside of your routine. And I'm so glad that we took that risk to do so, because so many people have told us over the past year, I wish I could do what you're doing. And the reality is that we were just two random people that made the decision and called a friend one day and said, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? And luckily, thank you, Amy. She said, you should do it. And then we did it.
Yep. So here we are a year later, and we survived.
And I feel like we are better people because of it.
Yeah. All right. So where are we now?
We're actually in Kentucky.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
So here's a quick update on what life looks like now. I have actually gotten started back working full time. That was a decision that we had made, kind of seeking some financial stability, but also keeping some flexibility. So I was looking for a job that had some flexibility to it, but was also so meaningful and aligned with my values. And so I was able to finally find that. It did take a little while, but I'm in a good spot. So I'm really excited about that.
I am still working contract work and actually have kind of turned some of these skills that I've learned through doing YouTube into some production work and video editing work, which has been super exciting. I've been able to still engage those kind of creative muscles outside of our YouTube channel, which has been really exciting. And that work is entirely location flexible and time flexible, which I found really works for me. This whole project management, video editing, creativity thing has been awesome for me.
All those lessons that we learned over the past year have really kind of shaped the type of work that we've been looking for and the conversations with, the different contracts of the different employers along the way. Because at the end of the day, what is work for? But to be able to live. And we want to live in the way that really aligns with who we are as people.
Mm-hmm. So we still have a long list of experiences that we want to have and that we want to share with you too. So stick around and keep hanging out and see where we're headed next. If you have a question, leave them in the comments and we will definitely do our best to answer it as thoroughly and honestly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So lots of things to come and we're really excited about it. So hit that subscribe button and like this video for more content like this. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
We do that every time.
Yeah, I think. Okay, here we go.
Sign off. How do we sign off on these?